so radical that the patient must die in order to live.
Because it was a very complex aneurysm, it also involved a very complex surgical procedure, which included stopping the heart.
Stopping the heart. It's known as hypothermic cardiac arrest. The body is chilled until the heart finally stops.
That's the aneurysm. Okay.
The blood is emptied from the body and the brain to safely allow repair of the aneurysm. At this point, the patient is clinically dead. No brain waves, no heartbeat, nothing. Dr. Spetzler is one of only a handful of surgeons in the world who can perform this procedure. For Pam's husband, Butch, the news was devastating.
They told me that they were going to stop her heart. They almost stopped mine.
Still, they knew it was Pam's only chance.
And so it's at the very...
The morning of the surgery, that was scary, because you don't know if you're going to see her.
It was the beginning of a terrifying 10 hours for Butch and for Pam.
I remember the sound of the wheels on the gurney. They were a little squeaky. I began to hear some music wafting down the hall, and I asked where that was coming from. And he said, well, that's Dr. Spetzler. He's playing.
A musician in his own right, Dr. Spetzler plays the piano in his office to relax before surgery.
And I remember listening to his touch. The control was in his hands. He would most assuredly be the best bet to hold the knife when they opened my brain.
The procedure starts really by putting the patient to sleep, starting to cool the patient externally. The second thing that's done is the patient is given a drug that actually shuts down the metabolism of your brain, and that drug has the ability to get rid of all your brain waves.
Pam's brain was completely shut down, making her incapable of generating a thought or a memory.
When the temperature gets down to 16, 17, 18 degrees of centigrade, the heart and lung machine is actually turned off, and a significant amount of the body's blood is allowed to pool in a reservoir, and that empties the blood out over the aneurysm.
Pam's heart stopped. She had no blood circulating in her body or her brain. She was dead except for the fact that Dr. Spetzler had the ability to restart her heart and bring her back. But during the hour of clinical death, Pam believes she was incredibly, acutely alive. She embarks upon one of the most remarkable near-death experiences ever reported when Beyond Human Limits returns. Pam Reynold is clinically dead. But as her body lies lifeless on the operating table, she believes her mind lives on.
The first really vivid memory I had was of a sound. I heard a sound and it was distinct. It reminded me of sort of being in a dentist's office. And I remember wondering what that sound was. The sound began to pull me.
With very fine instruments, we separate tiny little blood vessels that are adherent to this balloon.
First sound, then sight. Pam becomes an observer of her own operation.
I was sort of looking down at the body, and I knew it was my body, but I was not at all attached to it. I was not that body. I was whatever was looking down at it. And I remember in his hand there was a tool that looked to me like the handle on my electric toothbrush. And it had bits, and they were kept in this case that looked very similar to the case that my father kept his sockets in.
Then something else caught Pam's attention.
And I saw a very tiny pinpoint of brilliant white light way off in the distance. And it began to pull me. And I distinctly heard my grandmother call me. And I remember thinking, I wonder if I deserve to be here. I'm not a perfect person. And my grandmother said to me, you were a child sent away to school. And as a child, we expected that you would spill your milk. It's the manner in which you clean it up that gives us cause for pride. I asked what was the nature of the light when they told me that I would not be allowed to go in. I said, is the light God? And it was communicated to me, no, that the light is not God. The light is what happens when God breathes. And at that point, I remember thinking, I'm standing in the breath of God.
But in the operating room, the surgery is coming to an end.
And I was again looking down at my body, and I saw it as a dead thing, and I didn't want to get in it.
The surgical team warms Pam's body and shocks her heart.
The tunnel was pushing and the body was pulling, and the sensation of it was rather like diving into a pool full of ice water. It hurt. And I came back with a jolt.
Dr. Spetzler is happy to report Pam's 10-hour surgery is a success, but he's confounded by what she tells him about her experience.
It struck me that this was incredibly perplexing and not understandable with what we know about the brain. Without any brainwave activity, it is inconceivable to me that the brain can receive, internalize, and maintain a memory. But at the same time, I think it is the height of egotism to say something can't happen just because we can't explain it.
Atlanta cardiologist and author Dr. Michael Sabom has thoroughly researched Pam's story.
I think what we're dealing here with is the bridge between the physical and the spiritual, the bridge between medicine and science and theology.
Other researchers believe there is no bridge at all, that the experience was merely the product of a dying brain.
Do I believe she had those experiences? Yes, of course I do. I think she's an honest, intelligent woman, and she's telling us something that she experienced, but the question is when? It's entirely possible that she's recalling something that occurred to her as the brain was slowing down, as it was being cooled, or as it was warming up and consciousness is beginning to reassert.
But Pam had this experience where she said she looked down on what was going on in the operating room, described equipment that I didn't even know what it looked like, and later confirmed that her description was accurate. She heard conversation that she could not have heard physically because both her ear canals were plugged, plus she had no brain waves at the time anyway.
I see us all as completely different tones. Everyone has a different tone. Now, we could go out of our way to make ourselves sound as much alike as possible, but that would be monotone. And how boring is that? The beauty is in the harmony. And I believe that my reason for being is to learn to make harmony with all the variable tones that present themselves